verbal reports from the Chair, Deputy Chair and the Mayor. I have a second and the Deputy Chair. Thank you. All those in favour say aye.
Are there any comments that can be made from the
Yep, you can speak to the motion,
Yep.
Mr Chair.
Sorry,
Mr Councillor Philippine, I'm getting confused.
Thank you, Chair.
And Councillor Walker. Sir John.
So look, Chair, thank you for at least the corridor that you just gave around the planning, and I speak on behalf of myself and Councillor Penny Hulse. I look forward to the development of our programs, because I think it's important that our work programs be developed as soon as we can. Therefore, that we can then do the work from our respective committees of the whole. So I look forward to that development, and the worship. Your Worship, you mentioned the word failure in regards to some of the issues that you addressed, and I have no doubt at all that that's one thing that we will not be doing around the overlap of some of the programs that we have and some of the delegations. That's one thing we will not be doing, and we will be doing and talking about the overlap, especially with housing, I hope, before the end of this year. Around confirming our work program. So I just say thank you, and I look forward to the development of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Philippine. Councillor Sir John Walker.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I'd like to address some of the issues with the motorway congestion. One of the big problems I see coming in from Bombay every day is trucks. Trucks occupy so many lanes, and they try to compete with the cars as well. They should do what they do in Italy and have the inside lane just for trucks only, or, as my wife suggests, have an hour off every day so it allows people to get to work and kids to go to school. Okay, it would take a brave person to do it. Say the truckies, they can allow it on the road for an hour, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's one way of getting rid of the congestion, because the trucks take all the space up, and there's a problem.
Thank you, Sir John. And Councillor Casey.
Just to clarify, I heard both the Chair and the Mayor talk about mass transit to the airport. Does that include rail?
Mass transit definitely includes rail.
It means trams.
It could also include light rail. That is not absolutely confirmed at this stage. So, look, I think we can dwell on that
Code
one.
word for trams.
We can dwell on that one another time.
But it's a yes.
It's not rapid transit. We need rapid transit to the airport.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Quacks.
Oh, thank you, Mr Chairman, and you know, for the plan ahead that we're working on, and I also thank the Deputy Chair and the Mayor. And I think it's really important that when we start looking at why we have congestion in the city, that we actually join the dots, Mr Chairman. And I think that past failure to join the dots has landed us in a place that we are now. You know, one thing we haven't recognised, for example, is that the size of Auckland at 530 square kilometres has only increased over the last 20 years by 8%. Now, while we've only increased the spatial area of Auckland by 8%, the population has grown by over 50%. Now, it doesn't take a genius, and I'm certainly no genius, to figure out that why we have congestion on our road. We've got more people living in the same small area, and that creates congestion, Mr Chairman, and I don't hear anybody actually addressing that issue. That issue is also why we have some of the most expensive housing in the world. And it beggars belief that in a country of a population of just 4 million people, just over 4 million people, I believe, that we have some of the most expensive housing in the world. And why is that? And nobody seems to have reflected to any great extent on that either, Mr Chairman. So it may be an opportunity during this term to actually determine why some of these problems that we have been brought about by the failure of politicians, both local and central, to actually look at what is driving the problems that we have. And we have no shortage of land, apart from the shortage that has been imposed by politicians. And I said it before and I'll say it again, that the urban growth boundaries that have been in place around Auckland now for a number of decades have been the greatest policy failure of local government in the history of this country.
Thank you, Councillor Quacks. Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, thank you. Just carrying on from what Councillor Walker and Councillor Quacks was talking about congestion, I think I lived in Singapore a number of years ago, and a few of you have heard this before, and what they do over there, they have the retailers start at 10 o'clock, and so that means you've got different people travelling on the roads. The schools start at a different time, and we all know that the time that we don't have a lot of congestion on our roads is actually when it's school holidays time. So whether we look at university starts at a different time, and we maybe look at retail starting at 10 o'clock instead of 9 o'clock. We can still have commercial and other things that start at normal times, but maybe the time has come that the population's grown so much that we really do need to start looking at what other countries that have a lot of congestion problems, how they've actually handled it, and we probably would be able to save a lot of money by doing something like that. So I think we need to start looking at that, and we need to get central government and all the local governments all looking at that, because it's not just happening in Auckland, it's happening across the country. So thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart, for that contribution. And Councillor Simpson.
I didn't hear this, Steve.
Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you.
I really hope that the first thing that we do is immediately address those matters that are within our scope and ability to manage. And one of the fundamental issues, and I've got some questions about this later on, is how we treat development which wasn't planned and sequenced and prioritised in accordance with our future urban land supply strategy. We have an enormous area of future urban land which has been identified and agreed through the unitary plan process, and we want to sequence that because we are in a capital constrained environment, and we want to ensure that we have sequencing so that we can fund it within the noting that we have a responsibility as a council to provide that utility infrastructure, the family of CCOs and the council responsible for doing that. But inherent to the unitary plan is a fundamental contradiction whereby we want to ensure that we get the growth, but we want to get the growth on our timetable. And our unitary plan doesn't provide for that, I would suggest. The unitary plan provides for growth to occur, but that development can occur if the development community can fund it any time they want, and they'll go through a structure plan process. And what I'm interested in is understanding whether in fact we accept that or whether we fundamentally challenge it, because what this unitary plan and the hearings process has confirmed, and it's a fundamental question for this council through this committee to resolve, and also through our budget, is that we can't dictate how those investment dollars are going to be spent, or where they're going to be spent and when they're going to be spent, because clearly I think some of those SHAs have fallen over because some of these developers and landowners have taken commercial decisions not to invest at this time or to that scale because new opportunities arise. That's just called the market making a decision. And if we don't accept that, then well, we're going to have to come up with a better planning option for them. If we do accept that, the reality is that we're not going to get some of the growth that we wanted, or it's not going to occur at this time, or it's going to occur but at another location. And our unitary plan allows that contradiction to take place, I would suggest, because we have RPS provisions that have been debated and agreed that require for an urban development footprint for Auckland, and we have a planning and sequencing policy under the Future Urban Land Supply, but we can't enforce that because it's not compulsory. And I'm not saying it should be compulsory, but it's a contradiction, sir, when we have in our blueprint for planning for Auckland that we want growth, but on our timetable and on our sequence, but we don't have the funding and infrastructure in place to require that, and so we have to leave it effectively up to the planning community. That is something that has to be addressed, because if we don't address it, we are going to continually be at conflict not only with the development community, but with Auckland Transport and Watercare, who are part of our family. And I would welcome your and the Mayor's sponsorship of work to ensure that we can address that fundamental challenge, because otherwise I think that it is going to become much harder over time to predict when that growth will occur, and that we will constantly be at loggerheads with the developers that we want to have building those houses. They will want to build, but on their timetable, in their locations, and that might not reflect where we want them to go.
Thank you, Councillor Newman, and there being no further speakers, we'll move.
Oh, I'd like to move an amendment that we receive the verbal reports from the speaker who's just spoken, Councillor Newman, from Councillor Quacks and from Councillor Stewart.
They are all recorded.
That's right, it's just very specific there. If that's the case, that's fine.
And so thank you, Councillor Newman. And I just remind members, look, there's going to be opportunity over the next 2 months to collate your thoughts, as Councillor Newman and others have clearly been considering. And I'll be dropping a line to you all, and then we'll collate our collective thoughts and start to build our program together for the next 3 years. So all in favour say
Point of order, Mr Chairman.
And the point
Just
of
a
order is?
clarification, Councillor Fletcher did raise an issue, and I think that if she gets that seconded, I think that should be up there as well.
So I'm just going to rule that the speeches were to the motion, and that's my ruling. So all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Say aye. Contrary, no. Declare that carried. Going to 10, and I welcome staff for item 10, the appeal